to move on to Module 6's guide. What is the primary goal of an experiment? Well, our idea, remember we focused on this last in Module 4 that says we want to infer cause and effect. So the primary goal of an experiment is to provide evidence for a cause and effect relationship between two variables. There are two common strategies used to control the effects of confounding variables. Remember, we defined confounding variables in the last module. Those are variables that might cause some issues with our results determining whether the explanatory actually explains the response or whether there's something else that might be an issue. One strategy is to directly control, which means if we think that gender has an issue, then we're going to go ahead and create a group of males and create a group of females and control by that idea. Another is random assignment. So when we randomly assign, then we are eliminating the option that if we were to group everybody or if we were to have people self-select, there's going to be bias. The goal of direct control is to stabilize the impact of confounding variables across the treatments. So meaning if I have two different treatments and we think that, again, gender is going to be an issue, we're going to split male and female to receive one treatment and male and female to receive another treatment as well. What about random assignment? Why do we randomly assign? Well, we want the groups to be similar in ideas like characteristics or something. We don't want self-selection to happen, so we don't want one group that's heavy in something and another group that's heavy or that's light in some sort of characteristic. We want similar groups in respect to characteristics that we think might influence the response variable. This is creating similar treatment groups. Are you going to use direct control or are you going to use random assignment? Well, directly controlling is often difficult, and so your decision between using random assignment and direct control is all about your ability to do direct control or not. So if you can't directly control, you're going to use random assignment. If you can directly control, ideally, you would like to be able to do that, but sometimes that can be expensive or unrealistic. Now I'd like you to take a second to read the Learn by Doing. Remember, it's from page 23. And then we're going to move on and analyze the graphs on the next page. The question that's asked is whether the data support the claim. The idea here is that there is a maze that's run by rats and they're played two different types of music. One is Mozart, one is Anthrax, and then there's the control group that didn't hear any music. So these rats run the maze. And we want to know whether the type of music actually impacts their ability to complete the maze faster or not. So remember, a good performance in this case is going to be the amount of time that it takes in seconds is less. So are they faster, meaning less seconds? So if you look at this treatment group here with the green, which is Anthrax, they took a long time. So that means that these people were slow and these people were fast. And this is the Mozart group. This is the control group. And this is the Anthrax group. That's labeled here on your chart. This was the first week. That was the average of the first week. This is the fourth week. Now, if you notice on these graphs, there's these lines here with a bar underneath it. That's the average. So that's telling you what the average of that time is. So the average here for Anthrax rats versus the average here for the Mozart rats and the average here for the control rats. And then on the fourth week, that's where you see those averages as well. Now, in order to support the claim of whether the music impacts their ability to run, notice that the average for the Mozart rats is much smaller than control and much smaller than Anthrax. So I would say yes, the mean is very high, or the mean is very high for Anthrax, but it is much lower for Mozart, which means that they were faster. There's a few more definitions. Feel free to go ahead and pause and record those definitions. Last week, I actually talked about blinding and I talked about the placebo effect because we defined double blind last week and we talked about single blind. I think actually we talked about double blind and we talked about what a placebo was. So the placebo effect is where there's treatment with no active ingredients, and what happens typically is that there's improvement or it looks like the person received the treatment when they didn't. And blinding, there's single blind where the participant doesn't realize what treatment they got, and double blind where neither the participant nor the researcher knows what treatment there was. Go ahead and pause and write down those definitions if you need to and verify what you have. And then go ahead and take a second to read the Learn by Doing, refresh from page 24. And we want to know why the results did not generalize. The main thing here that I would try and think about is generalize to what? When they say they did not generalize, it didn't generalize to what population. So we're trying to figure out why didn't it generalize to a certain population. And we're talking about fleets of rental and business cars. And then the Insurance Institute found only 5% in rear end collisions. So, of what? What type of cars are they talking about? Is the Insurance Institute looking at personal vehicles versus rental and business cars? So, the type of vehicle that we're talking about impacts, and it's very unclear here. So, we really don't know what population they're talking about. Okay, and lastly, we want to fill in the blanks. Random selection versus random assignment. So random selection is in sampling. So there's a difference when we're talking about sampling versus random assignment. If you're randomly selecting, that's a sampling. If you're randomly assigning, you're doing that in a treatment. So we've got selection goes with sampling and assigning goes with experiments. Random selection is so we can control bias. And random assignment is so that we can control the effects of confounding variables. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, please feel free to post it on the discussion board.